Hello, all you beautiful people in YouTube land, and my favorite FBI agent, who I'm sure is watching every stream diligently. Well, how are you all doing today?
Good,
Having a
good.
little bit of a bad hair day. I just got off of work, but other than that, I'm pretty good. I think I got about 95% of my Christmas shopping done. So yeah.
That's that's cool. At least you still have hair. My
Yeah.
avatar is deliberately deceptive,
Mm,
but I'm here joined with my good friends Chairview and the Dark Conservatarian. Uh,
Hey,
and we're here to review The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, the
da,
late,
da,
the,
da.
yeah, the latest installment in the Lord of the Rings saga. But, but
Yep.
this time as an animated movie, which is only the fourth time that's happened.
Right.
I,
Uh,
I still don't think that Tolkien would be very impressed with it.
Probably not. Overall, what was your opinion of the movie, Darkon?
Originally coming out of it, I thought it was a 7 out of 10. I think maybe possibly on further thought, especially hearing other people's opinions, which a good chunk of them are kind of hyperbolic, I will say. But with some legitimate criticism taken into account, it might be a 6 out of 10 for me. But I'm kind of debating on whether that I would consider it a 6 or a 7. It's somewhere in that range. I still like it a lot better than Battle of the Five Armies, though, which is the absolute worst bit of Lord of the Rings content that I personally have seen. I cannot judge about Rings of Power personally because I haven't seen one single episode of that.
It's horrific.
And I think, yeah, and Pigs Can Fly, I've heard as well. But I think I might even like it a bit better, just a smidge better, anyways, than Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, too.
Right.
Also, I had a
What was your
question.
opinion of the movie overall?
Well, this one it feels more like Lord of the Rings than like something like Rings of Power did, and it did remind you of the old animation in the '80s, kind of. But like,
Yeah.
it was well animated. It's a pretty movie. Like, and I thought the story was all right. I did think, like I said, I was saying before we went on air that like she is close to a Mary Sue, but she's not so overpowered that you stop watching and get annoyed with it.
Yeah. Well,
That's kind of how I felt. I also probably ranked this movie more around a 6 out of 10 because
Yeah,
I will definitely say this is definitely the best animated Lord of the Rings movie ever made. I
yeah.
can say that with 100% certainty.
I had one question. Did we want to like review it without giving away any spoilers, and then we get into spoiler
No, this
material?
is
Or
a
what?
spoiler stream. You feel spoil away.
All right. Well, you mentioned the animation chair. I want to say that I was all on board with the anime style of animation. I am
Yeah.
certainly glad that, with that said, they did not do one of the typical anime tropes, that being having a character go all spaz out. You know of how that those anime movies has that one or few characters that every time they get angry, their eyes will get super giant, their mouth will
Yeah.
like
That's
get
a
down to
very
their chin, and
that is a
they're
very like narrow subset of anime, dude. I mean, anime, just like American animation, Japanese animation is quite varied.
maybe, but I definitely know that in the Avatar: The Last Airbender, Sokka sometimes has moments that are at
That's
least
technically
similar to
not an
that.
anime, dude. It was an American Korean collaboration, not really Japanese at all.
Sure, it's kind of a
Yeah.
similar-ish style in that. But anyway, one thing that I wanted to say about the animation, though, it's probably like the weakest point of the movie for me personally is the visuals just in general, not the animation of the characters themselves, but more of how that they blended with the backgrounds behind them. Because obviously, this looks like to be a mixing of 3D and like painted backgrounds with 2D animated figures, and it's like a cool concept. We've seen it like fleshed out very well in Treasure Planet, let's say, for example, but not particularly with this movie because there was like quite a handful of times of where that, especially whenever they did like a panning shot, it looked like that the characters were hovering over that piece of ground that they were standing on, or it looked like a very bad green screen.
Well, that
mountains were pretty.
the reason why this movie exists at all. The reason this movie exists, the sole reason this movie exists, is because under the contract with the Tolkien estate, Warner Brothers had to make a Lord of the Rings movie every 10 years in order to keep the rights. And if they went more than 10 years without making a Lord of the Rings movie, the rights would revert back to the Tolkien estate.
Here's the thing. This has happened with other franchises, right? Where they have the rights and they have to make something. But the rule is they have to make it. They don't have to release it. Right?
No, I believe they do have to release it.
Nope.
And if you're going to make it, you might as well release it, you know?
There have been cases in the past where they made something, but they never put it out, but they still kept the rights to the thing.
Well, I'm not really sure about this exact contract. It may have a clause that you do have to release it. Sometimes that is the case. Other times it's not.
Right.
All right. And that's probably why they only gave like $30 million for the budget of producing this movie. And I gotta say, it definitely shows in the visuals to me personally. I mean, there were times of where that the visuals did look good. It's just that sometimes that they looked really shoddy. There was like even like a couple points I remember of where that the backgrounds just looked plain flat, like flatter than any 2D animation animated movie of the 90s.
Well, I'd say it feels like something that was made for like a streaming show, like I don't know, like something like Blood of Zeus or Castlevania. It feels a lot like those. Well, the animation is absolutely fine because they're just streaming shows. But this is when you do release something in theaters, you generally do expect a higher standard.
Yeah,
right. But honestly, the animation in this wasn't bad though. It certainly had a few real cool moments. And one thing what I will really praise about it, the battle scenes were really quite visceral and intense. Actually, probably even more so than Peter Jackson's live action movies.
I wouldn't go that far, Jim.
Well, what I mean though is that it was like it felt more gritty and violent than Peter Jackson was.
Here's what's stupid about the whole war in the first place. Okay, so in this movie, Wolf is the son, and his dad are from this other
Dunling
kingdom. So they come over to join the kingdoms, you know, how they always offer the daughter, and then they both get married. One from each clan get married, and it's supposed to unify everything. So they come down there. The king ends up challenging the fat father of Wolf to a fight and accidentally kills the guy because the guy like has a heart attack or something.
Well, he gets kills him with one punch, is why he has the nickname Helm Hammerhand.
Right, but that still shouldn't be his fault that the guy had a heart attack. Like,
well, I mean, a grieving son wasn't going to think rationally, but the nation love the dialogue between the two before the fight starts in the royal hall. You can tell, like in their banter, like how Helm says to him, "I see you haven't missed any meals."
Yeah, it's like, let's take this out. I can't fight in the kingdom, but let's go outside. Blah blah blah.
I wanted to say my opinion about
what I'm saying though is it was well written because you can tell just by their banter that these two men have a history with each other. Right. It doesn't go into details of the things they do, but you can tell that there's tension and the two have a history and just kind of mutually dislike each other.
Okay,
I wanted to say a point about the action scenes. I personally thought that they were kind of mixed. Like there was some points of where that they were kind of like awkwardly staged or a little bit like clunky, but there was about half of them that I thought was rather impressive. Like whenever that Helm Hammerhand like gone like punching a punk, those like felt very raw. The very thud sound effect that happened whenever that he landed a blow on a motherfucker in the face. And that one part of where that spoilers, y'all, of when that Haleth takes down a Mumakil, it was a little bit more grounded than the way that Legolas did it. And I thought
what I was saying earlier. Yeah.
Okay.
What I meant by more visceral is I feel like in order to get a PG-13 rating, I think like the MPA tolerates more violence in animation than they do in a live action movie.
Right,
and that probably is the reason why.
I was
gotta say
impressed by
that
the detail in the siege tower, like animation wise, like it was just really intricate and detailed, and you could see every, you know,
see
stick and
every
stone that made up the
support
thing.
beam for it.
I thought it was kind of cool that they did that. But then, like, what I'm saying is, like,
Yeah.
at the start, the battles seem justified. Like, they start this war because he killed the guy, whatever.
Yeah.
But then,
Keep talking.
Wolf, the main character, becomes obsessed because she didn't want to be with him or marry him or whatever. So he then becomes so obsessed with her that he just won't stop until, because she embarrassed him, I guess.
Yeah, combination of the man's ego plus he kind of felt a bit spurned by her as well. Plus the death of his father. The combination of all those things just kind of drove him mad, and he was just desperate for blood.
I just thought it was funny though when I don't know what that old lady. I don't know what her role was. I forget what her name is, but is it her grandma or something like that?
No,
Anyway,
she's the shield maiden was.
Alwyn, I think.
Just a random shield maiden.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
because
she
she
was
just
shield
said,
maiden.
"Oh, they were asking about whatever," and then she goes, "Oh, do you remember the shield maidens?" And like, if you look up shield maidens in history, though, totally different.
Well, it's also worth noting about this story in terms of it being a Tolkien adaptation is the story in the book that it's based off from the Lord of the Rings appendices is like 2 pages of story.
Right.
So to obviously to bloat that in and make an entire movie of the story obviously did require adding a lot of things that were not in the original story. So the choices in order to bloat the length though are certainly quite questionable. Obviously, the big one that everyone's focusing on, and I have to kind of agree with most of the criticisms, was to make Helm's daughter, who in the book isn't even named.
Yeah.
It just briefly mentions that he had a daughter, and make her the central character of the entire movie, essentially.
Yeah, I definitely agree with those criticisms about this movie. But if we're going to like address the giant woke Oliphant in the room, ultimately she wasn't a deal breaker. It's not like she was like overly stoic and emotionless in the same way as Captain Marvel or
You should say the Mama
Ray
Kill
was.
in the room.
Huh?
You should say the Mama Kill in the room.
Mama Kill, Oliphant. I mean, Sam refers to, if you remember from episode 2 of the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, Sam refers to the Mama Kill as, "Hey, look, Mr. Frodo, it's an Oliphant."
But if you compare this main female character to what they did with Rings of Power, where they had Galadriel be like so OP and could take on 6 giant men and like break out of prison and do all this stuff and like not have a struggle at all. At least this girl like had somewhat of an arc. At least she didn't like kick the entire army's ass by herself.
Like, I definitely think that all the criticism is definitely hyperbolic as far as this being like a girl boss movie. Like, sure, there was like some parts of where that they made her overly perfect personality wise.
It is definitely a girl boss movie.
But here's the thing. Before the ending battle that she has with Wolf, she is quite struggling with one-on-one fights. In fact, there is like I think Chair kind of was implying right there was that there was a one point of where that she gets kidnapped by the henchmen. Although I do have to ask, why didn't she just pull the burlap sack off of her head? It's not like that they tied her hands before the one guy threw her over his shoulders or anything like that. That was bit weird.
That's a point. I don't think I even noticed that, but
but at least they showed like some struggle with her.
I think the big mistake is I think the king's nephew, Freelaf, I think his name was. Freelaf. I really think he should have been the main character of this movie because if you think about it, his arc essentially feels much better for the kind of hero's journey that Tolkien wanted to tell than Hera. He's basically a trusted nephew of the king. He basically has a role kind of just as a guard. Him failing to protect the king's daughter, and then he has to kind of go into exile. Then he has to kind of save the kingdom by the end of the story and eventually take the throne. That's a more interesting story than Hera's, to be honest. And I think if he had been the main character, I honestly think this movie would better received.
It definitely would have felt like more of a better fleshed out movie if they at least gave him some amount of focus. Like one of the strong points
He
of
has
the
some
original,
focus, but I think he should have been the main character.
right? Well, yeah, that preferably, but at bare minimum, what I'm saying about the original Jackson trilogy is that they have like this full ensemble of characters, and they give them all like their big time to shine. And really, I think in this movie they did not like give enough characters like that kind of spotlight in the same way that the Jackson trilogy did. And so therefore, because they only focused mostly on Hera and Helm and did not like fill up the runtime well enough in that regard, the movie just feels kind of a little bit overly, just slightly overly bloated and kind of weird in the pacing to me. Like by the 1 hour 50-minute mark, I was thinking, is this the end yet? Are we wrapping up here soon?
Well, I was thinking though that also Hera's two brothers should have gotten more screen time too. I mean, it would have definitely left more of an impact after they get killed in the way they do if we had gotten to know them more as characters. But they're more in the background. We're told about them, but not real. We don't really get to know them very well.
Yeah. The highlight of the movie is basically Hammerhand's last stand or whatever.
Yeah.
Where he basically does the whole "you shall not pass" is basically the moment that he had where he's yelling at them and whatever.
And but that is
talking about it when he goes like punching a bunch of Dunlingers on the causeway there in front of Helm's Deep.
And they find
him freezes in place or whatever. Yeah.
Well, but even though that scene also was kind of not that well done because it didn't really make sense that he did that whole last stand after Hera was already pretty much to safety. I think it would have been more effective if Hera was in danger right behind him. If he didn't, then his sacrifice would have been more meaningful. But as it is, I kind of wonder: did he just decide to commit suicide due to the deaths of his son, or what was the purpose? Then his daughter was safe.
That would have definitely been a more effective way. I mean, it just needed that slight tweak to perfect that scene. I mean, other than that, I think that the scene was great. It was like rather cathartic to see him like fist fight those dudes as I keep on like overly emphasizing. But one of the criticisms is of how that supposedly that battle is completely pointless. Like, it could have used some tweaking, but the way that I think about it is that, Helm was only able to crack open the door just big enough to let her like small daughter like slip through the crack there, and there wasn't really enough time to open it big enough for his big burly body to get through. And so he was all like, there's not enough time for me to get through, I'm shutting it the rest of the way. And then he decided that he was going to go out like taking advantage of Wolf's hubris. I think that's the biggest reason why all these Dunlingers were like charging at there, even though it was a closed gate, is because Wolf was all is just absolutely bloodthirsty and blood mad, and he's suffering from a big case of cold-hearted hubris, to where that even if there's like no reason to continually pursue these people, he's still going to pursue them because he's that spiteful and hate-filled and whatnot.
Yeah. The men that he teams up with are kind of the same wild folk that you see Saruman kind of like unleash at the beginning of the Two Towers.
Yeah. We will die for Saruman.
Yes, and then the end. Okay.
Cut,
So the ending, I was thinking of like those reactions when, you know how you saw those compilations of people reacting to the stupid Star Wars trailer or whatever. At the end of this one, it's like, Mr. Wizard shows up and everybody's like, "Oh yeah." That's supposed to be the "oh my god" moment at the end where they link it to the other movies, right?
Oh yeah, they use like archival recordings of Christopher Lee for Saruman. When I heard that Saruman was going to be played by archival recordings, I definitely knew his role wasn't going to be a big one, and it turned out to literally just be one line.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was just kind of there as a cameo because Christopher Lee, of course, passed away almost a decade ago now. Yeah. He died shortly after the last Hobbit movie.
That when they show that the evil eye hasn't quite taken over yet and all that stuff. So those are the only two moments I think that really push the fact that, hey, this is a prequel,
Another fun little cameo is those two orcs are voiced by Billy Boy and Dominic McGowan, the guys who played Merry and Pippin in the original Lord of the Rings
McGowan.
trilogy. They actually do appear as the voice of two of the orcs there.
Yeah,
that was kind of a fun. And they have the actress who played Eowyn in the Lord of the Rings trilogy as
she was
as
a
the
narrator
of this movie.
Right, and on that point, actually, I think that there's like one bit of flaw on the story writing of this movie is that instead of like actually showing how headstrong or strong-willed or whatever the descriptor is of Hera, they decide to like tell. Excuse me. They decide to exposit it, tell rather than show that she has all these great qualities. So that might be like another point that kind of backs up the point of all the detractors who are like, "Oh, Mary Sue," and all that stuff.
Yeah, kind of close to a Mary Sue, but like I said, in terms of like the girl boss characters for modern Hollywood features, she's definitely not the worst of them. But I still would have preferred her cousin. Her had been the main character of this movie. She could have still been in it. I mean, the king did have a daughter in the original story, and her making her a bit more of a fleshed out character and giving her a name compared to what she was in the story was absolutely fine. But it's another thing for her to like her being able to take down a man in combat. And granted, Wolf was never portrayed as any kind of master swordsman or anything like that, but it's still
and there's also
silly.
one point of where that he like throws her like a rag doll over his back, so as to emphasize that ultimately he is stronger than her. But I almost think that maybe the implication on what she was able to compensate for lack of strength is that she's more agile and not as clumsy and maybe more skilled than Wolf. Because Wolf seems like a pathetic weasel who is not that particularly, well, like you said, not that particularly skilled in combat. And
he seems like a kind of backstabbing scumbag who just gets his way by stabbing you in the back when you're not looking, not facing anyone like a man. Like if he had faced Helm Hammerhand in battle, it would have been over in 2 seconds.
Yeah,
he was just never told no. Like his dad did everything he wanted. Like
right.
Yeah. So maybe that
also explains why he was so furious beyond the usual about his father being killed. He probably had a very good relationship with his father. His father probably spoiled him and gave him everything he wanted. And then when his father dies, even though it was ultimately the result of his own actions. I mean, it was in fair combat with the king, a fight that he instigated, but still, it was something he could not accept.
There is one point of criticism that was brought up. I believe it was by the YouTube channel called Master Samwise, if you guys ever heard of him. He goes talking about that the way that it was actually explained in the books as to how that fight happens. It's not in like technically in fair combat that he kills him. It's that I can't remember exactly how it was staged. It was like in some kind of rage that Helm Hammerhand like punched Freka and killed him, and not out of like, oh, I didn't mean to do that, but more like his rage and his lack of self-control. And then if maybe they shown that in the movie, there could have been like a little bit more of a tangible arc. I mean, there's still a tangible arc on Helm's part in this movie, but there would have been even more of an arc if he like gone from this rather out of so not out of control rage-filled angry guy, and then he kind of redeems himself by saving his daughter at the end, which he does at the end, but still the start point would have been like made it a lot more interesting arc to witness.
Well, I think I'm having it be he didn't mean to kill the guy; he just meant to kick his ass. I mean, kind of does make him more sympathetic. It makes him not a little more cold blooded.
Sure.
You kind of see that. You kind of say sometimes you want to beat some guy's ass, but not want to kill him. You know. But of course, the guy was fat. He obviously was in poor health. Obviously, it was very foolish for him to challenge the king. So he's still able to kill the guy in one punch.
Might I say that Helm Hammerhand was actually my favorite character in the whole movie?
Yeah, I'll agree. He definitely had someone. Brian Cox did a great job voicing him too.
Yeah, like of how that the Dune books explain Paul Atreides and how that, especially after he gets the one sandworm blood. He drinks that, like going towards the end of the book, and then it goes explaining of how imposing and powerful he is just by his mere presence and voice and whatnot. Yeah. I could never like imagine exactly what the personality imposition of his character would be unless it was like shown in the same way that it was in Dune Part 2, like it was. I feel like the same way with Helm Hammerhand here in this movie. Like everybody goes talking about how Helm Hammerhand is such a great king, such a great charismatic and likable leader, and I think that this movie like really shown that with success. Yeah, that Helm Hammerhand is in fact a very charismatic and commanding personality. Like just whenever, yeah.
But of course, he fails in battle mostly because he was foolish to trust the wrong person. One of his right-hand men ends up betraying him, which leads
to defeat. But then they also had the moment where he said right before his sacrifice or whatever, he said to her that because it was always like with kings back then in this time period, I guess. And from when, the time period where Tolkien wrote it, but then also the time period of the actual story, right? Where where they would always be like, oh, my son, right?
Yeah.
It's so important to have your son be ready to be the next leader and be some military genius or whatever. But he never trusted his daughter to do it because, she's a girl.
Yeah. Which is where he said the line in Helm is in your brothers. It's not with you. He just planned on marrying her off to some prince in Gondor and have her.
Where usually that's what the women were good for, was to, unite two factions or whatever. Usually it was like, and but yeah, this whole they did push feminism a little bit in this movie, but they're not shoving it down your throat. Like Rings of Power shoved it down your throat. Okay. The latest Star Wars thing, that was shoving it down your throat too.
Oh, yeah.
But this one was like, yeah, she's a strong female character, whatever, A lot of people were pissed about the fact that they, took this one or two lines that this girl had and made her this heroine or whatever.
Yeah.
She had no lines in the book. Literally, in the book, it just mentions that she had a daughter. That Helm had a daughter, and that's it. That's the entirety.
I'm looking at reviews right now. This one guy said that her outfit was too modern and sexy for.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think so. But someone in that. Well, one, it's a fantasy world. It's not really historically accurate to any real period. But
you're going to bitch about a character making a woman beautiful? Well,
fairly.
Yeah,
I'm not complaining.
They made her a redhead, which is something that Hollywood hates. If it were overly woke, I probably would have made her like biracial, just or something.
Right, that's the real issue. Hollywood hates redheads. That's what the issue is.
Yeah, Hollywood hates redheads normally. So we finally got some redheaded representation with this movie.
So this one reviewer gave it a 6 out of 10 and said, the story is good. I mean, it's Tolkien. But animation is so bad. So many problems where they mix 2D and 3D. Textures are horrible. Fake depth of field. Characters floating in the air while walking. I didn't notice that, but I'll have to go back. Directing mediocre. Voice acting mediocre. Such a shame for a good story. A solid.
I thought the voice acting was pretty good, generally.
Voice acting was nothing mediocre.
Yeah, Brian. Yeah, the voice acting I thought was all pretty good in this movie. I didn't really have any problems with any of the voice acting.
I will say that there is only like one character that really slightly annoyed me, that being like the clumsy Leaf servant, the servant dude named Leaf. I mean, he seemed to like, at least he wasn't like overly spastic like I am annoyed with some tropes in anime, but still. Even he was like, he was fine, he was all right, but not a single character or performance that I thought was bad either. Well, actually, Wolf was bad, but Wolf was bad in a way that serviced the story and of how he starts off.
He's supposed to be bad.
Well, yeah, but then there are some certain villains that are not that nasty or cold-hearted in the grand scheme of things, to where that a movie like really makes you want to hate them. But then you have like a kind of anti-villains or whatever you want to call them, like Denethor, that the movie makes you want to hate them.
Right.
And then you have Wolf in this movie, who's all like just yeah. He was
Well, I
so
mean, you saw that
cold-hearted with
he was not a rational man and he was driven by blind emotional bloodlust. Particularly the scene where he murders the king's son, because it's essentially allowing the king's son to go, but capturing Helm Hammerhand. That would have brought an end to the conflict. That would have led to his victory, and would have been better off literally for everyone, including him. And yet he still feels the need to murder the king's son because, again, he's driven not by really rational goals, but just by bloodlust and rage.
Right. I did want to mention one other thing about the whole criticism about Hera and the feminism point about it. I posted a review on this one Facebook Lord of the Rings group that I'm in, and I said personally that I thought it was it did not feel like a we don't need no men kind of attitude within this movie as far as that type
then
of...
why did she, if that's true though, why did she say that she didn't want to marry any man? I have an issue with that.
She's a lesbian, duh.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It should have just been that I don't think you're worthy because she saw some darkness in him, the same darkness her father clearly saw. That would have been better. But instead, she says, "I don't want to marry any man."
No, it's like what's it called? The anime movie with the girl with the red hair. What's her name?
I think other people pointed out the similarities between this movie and
Brave.
Brave.
Yeah,
I've got the redheaded daughter who also doesn't want to marry anyone. So it's kind of.
Also, I like the fact that for her final stand against Wolf, that she shows up in like almost what looks like would be a wedding dress, and instead of going down there and being like, "I'll marry you," she's like, "No, I'm gonna fight you."
Maybe she was just not wanting to marry.
That to mock him. That was done. That was actually smart because it showed that her wearing that while fighting him was clearly done to spite his rage. And if he let his anger get out of control, it would make him easier to defeat.
And I like the fake out where they make you think that he's after for a second there.
Yeah.
But okay, so yeah, there was a little bit of "we don't need no man" kind of attitude when she's all like she doesn't want to marry. I will say that maybe she just did not want to marry any man that was immediately available, like of royal blood, be it Wolf or the Prince of Gondor or anyone else. Maybe she eventually marries some countryside boy when she goes off on her own self-exile.
Well, I don't know, because
I don't want to marry them right now.
A free spirit the rest of her days, and actually, that's kind of selfish of her because with her brother's dead, she's now the sole heir to her father's bloodline.
Well, here's the thing, though. She makes a point later in the movie where she goes, "Here's the difference. I get to choose." When she went to fight him, she said, "I get to choose," which normally the men that she was being proposed to marry, she didn't get to choose them. So she's not going to marry some man that someone else chose for her. Basically, is what she means.
Did she even meet the Prince of Gondor that she was that she was supposedly betrothed to?
Does she
I don't think it ever made clear that she met the guy.
Yeah. So maybe there is a little bit of legitimacy with feminism in that front. It's like, I did not even meet this guy, and you want me to just marry somebody just for political allegiance with Gondor?
Well, that's what like back in the day,
which was very normal in the Middle Ages. Yeah.
That's what kings would do with their daughters, like use them as political tools, basically.
But the thing that I wanted to say, just to clarify on my point a little bit earlier, the sense that I thought that this was not as much of a "we don't need no man" kind of attitude kind of movie was the fact that she wasn't like shunning aside every single male character that was around her. Like when she has that one little bit of banter with Freyloff makes some kind of quip about her like finally looking like a lady for once. Like instead of like leaning into any kind of third wave feminism and having her like embarrass him, she just kind of plays along with that. She doesn't like upstage Helm Hammerhand at any point during political negotiations with Freka or anyone else, like a movie would have otherwise shown in our modern Hollywood. She does not insult Haleth or Hama or anything else like that. Like it just. The thing that I'm trying to get at is that it seemed like throughout this entire movie, she legitimately and truly loved and respected the men around her instead of like acting all apathetic or looking at them with nostrils looking down at them or anything like that.
Yeah.
True.
But like,
all that's true. So that's why I said about this movie, I was not blown away by it in any way. It didn't, but I was overall satisfied. And it's a $30 million movie, and I found it much more impressive than many movies with much higher budgets.
all I gotta say is,
This year.
General Wolf should have listened to his right-hand man instead of killing him, because his guy was right. He was like, "Don't do it. This is a trap. She's planning something."
Yeah.
Well, I guess he was too That was the king's biggest mistake. He was too trusting of the men he fought beside earlier. He didn't anticipate one could betray him, but one could betray him because, of course, money talks, and the wolf obviously has something to bribe him with.
What do you guys think of the one point in the mid part of the movie of where that they go talking about how that Helm Hammerhand has turned into a wraith and all that other stuff?
Like, well, I actually loved that. I thought that was brilliant. It really showed that how he was becoming a legend in and of himself, just for being tough and hanging out in the snow, killing these men like that.
It reminded me of that meme, though. You know that meme where it's like, "Okay, Grandma, let's get you back to bed now."
Right. But was that actually in the book, though?
I don't know if Becoming the Wraith. I haven't read the book in years, but him having at the Hornstrom, having a big last stand where his body is like found frozen, standing up in battle. That was in the book, and that's why. And that story is passed on, and that's why the Hornstrom is renamed Helm's Deep.
Right. My thing with that part of the movie of where that he's being alleged to have turned into a wraith and that little legend, like, I definitely like the setup of it all. It felt very cryptic and haunting. Like, the movie just felt like it took like an entirely different tone. Like, it felt in the beginning portions of the movie kind of like a typical it kind of felt similar to the Two Towers, and it was a war that was happening in Rohan. And then at that point, it felt like it took like a dark turn, like almost like a Lord of the Rings style kind of horror flick. Like Helm Hammerhand has suddenly turned into like a apathetic monster or something. But I'm not so sure
that lady
how I felt
was trying to scare the kids the entire movie. She was trying to scare the kids over and over again with different stuff.
Right. I just did not know of how I felt about the payoff, and the payoff being that, he wasn't really turned into a wraith. He's his normal self totally now.
But he was just totally driven by blind rage. I mean, this is a man who lost his kingdom, lost both of his sons in one night. That kind of insane rage would, of course, motivate him to just want to get revenge against everyone responsible.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, Helm was still the best part of the whole movie, and his send-off was pretty badass. Him just like punching them guys in the snow there and freezing in place. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty. That's a good way to go out. I mean, I plan on dying the exact same way.
You guys seen those memes? Like the text says, "Woman, I want to die in bed surrounded by family." And then men, and it just shows some random scene from a movie or something of a man like fighting to the death, a whole bunch of baddies.
The masculine urge to die punching on enemy armies in the snow.
The Viking way, right? Where you don't get into Valhalla unless you die in battle, right?
Yes, I guess Helm Hammerhand would absolutely be administered into Valhalla. He died in glorious battle.
I mean, Rohan people were kind of based off of the Nordic peoples.
Yeah, they were.
I do gotta say, like, one thing that I liked about the original Jackson trilogy was that they did not have the obnoxious horns on their helmets, like, because that's a stereotype that has played out in Hollywood when really that's not historically accurate. But come to this movie, Helm Hammerhand does have one of those types of helmets that not like full exaggerated, like big old, like 1 foot long horns, but still kind of something that slightly could have been like, caught if one of his enemies that he's like dueling in battle They just swung their sword correctly to where they would have like caught his helmet and just knocked off his head or something. I'm not so sure if maybe that was how it was explained and designed within the Tolkien literature, but I don't know. It's just a little something that I noticed about the movie.
Yeah, I also like that they gave a tribute at the end to Bernard Hill, who of course, who played Theoden in the original trilogy and passed away recently.
I'm not so sure if I paid attention to that part. Was there like a mid-credits scene that I missed?
It's at the end. No, it's at the end credits. It's somewhere kind of giving it a tribute to him because Bernard Hill gave a fantastic performance as Theoden in the Jackson trilogy. So definitely his death is a sad loss for the industry.
Yep.
Yeah.
I still have yet to see Titanic or anything else that.
I guess he was like, if this is to be my end, then I will make it such an end as to be worthy of remembrance.
I thought that the eagle part was cool and everything, but the
eagles actually spoke in the books. That's kind of a change between Jackson's Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's. In The Hobbit, the book, the eagles actually spoke to Gandalf and the rest.
Actually, that's something that I kind of wanted to, that I noticed about this movie was how often do eagles actually interact with your average mortal man in Middle-earth? Because of how often that they interacted with Hera, especially at the beginning of the movie, like, oh, this is just our casual weekly meetup or something. It's like, that just felt like a little out of place. And
yeah, generally it was meant to be kind of a rare event in Middle-earth. They definitely were never meant to be Middle-earth taxis. They were a very proud race that only ever got involved in particular times, but supposedly couldn't be fucked to just help them destroy the One Ring by flying on top of it and just throwing it in the top of Mount Doom.
Right.
That's how it should have ended. I remember with that how Lord of the Rings should have ended. Like, then it's decided the ring must be destroyed, and Gandalf says, "I got an idea that just might work." They fly on top of the eagle over Mount Doom. And they throw it in for above 5 minutes later.
And with Boromir flashing his ass at
Sauron. They keep him distracted. They're like, wow, that was incredibly easy. Yes, it was. Could you imagine what it would have been like if we had walked the entire way? Don't be ridiculous. That would have been real stupid.
So they used eagles in like every age of the Lord of the Rings lore. So yeah, eagles were pretty involved.
My thing was, would they have like interacted with Hera like if it was just a casual weekly meetup, like it was almost portrayed like it was in the beginning of this movie?
Well, we're never told that exactly. That's something weekly. It could just be like it could be a very rare encounter.
Okay, I guess
we're never told this is just something she does every week.
Or every month, or every so often.
Yeah, because she hadn't done it before. Because he goes up and says, I was told that you can understand me,
When in the book, they actually just spoke to them.
Yeah, which would have made a bit more sense, but they didn't want to make it too fantastical, I guess.
Well, yeah, Jackson didn't really keep the whole talking animals. I guess he wanted to distinguish his Middle-earth from Narnia, where all the animals talk.
Right.
Yeah, but in Narnia, they're all like biblical references and stuff, right? So,
well, there's kind of Christian symbolism in Lord of the Rings as well. It's just a lot less blatant than in the Narnia books.
Yeah, there's that one monologue that Gandalf goes on about how he saw heaven briefly. It goes telling that to Pippin as they're about to meet their doom in the Battle of Minas Tirith.
Yeah. Tolkien kind of was very critical of other writers' works. Like from one letter said that he read Frank Herbert's Dune shortly before his death, and he said he hated the book. But but he never actually gave any reasons why.
I think it was theorized that maybe Frank Herbert's work was just a little bit too cynical for his taste.
Oh yeah, I can definitely. I mean, he didn't write why, but it's pretty easy to figure out when you see very different philosophies those two men have.
Yeah.
Like Tolkien, for example, in many writings, he denied the importance of allegory and said that it was kind of a lazy form of storytelling. Whereas Dune is pretty much nothing but political allegories, for example.
Mm.
So it's kind of. He also was supposedly critical of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, the Disney way. He was impressed by the animation, but he didn't like the way the dwarves were portrayed because they're different than his more classical version of how dwarves are, which I think is more of a petty complaint because obviously it's a different medium. Okay.
I mean, would you imagine how much of a fit he would have thrown if he found out how that World of Warcraft portrayed their orcs?
Right.
I mean, instead of them being like mindless, weak little drones, they're like these big, burly, chest-beating warrior culture people with a little bit of moral grayness and moral compass to them.
Whereas the orcs in Lord of the Rings are pretty much just cartoonishly evil, and our heroes are just fully justifying just killing them on sight.
Yeah, and since we're on this point, that was one of the stupidest things that I heard about Rings of Power Season 2. It's like they completely changed the lore and the personality of orcs. Orcs are not supposed to have some kind of morally gray, much less a morally good moral compass to them, and yet they go portraying that, hey, there's an orc family. It's like Rings of Power, Amazon, if you wanted to portray orcs in some kind of morally gray area, you should have adapted a series based off of World of Warcraft or something. Negotiate with Blizzard if you have to in order to get that done. Do not keep these two interpretations of orcs completely separate.
Tolkien I don't think in any Tolkien work he ever mentions the existence of female orcs.
Yeah,
because I don't think they sexually reproduce. I think they were all just fallen elves.
Right. I mean, I
created by other dark means.
I definitely got that impression as well. Is that they don't reproduce; they just corrupt old dead bodies, or maybe even living bodies, to be these twisted amalgamations of their former selves. Although I will say, I wouldn't put it far past me if there was female orcs, because a female can become corrupted and evil. Which makes me wonder what happens to female orcs. Do they just get eaten up by all the man orcs? Maybe, maybe that's what happened to them. And
we never see any female orcs in any of the movies, or at least none that we think are female. Maybe some of them were, and it's hard to tell. But Tolkien never mentions the existence of them.
Maybe they're transgender orcs, is what they are.
yes. The Lord Tolkien was a very woke fellow that way.
He doesn't explicitly mention it, but we can derive some implications. But definitely would not be any children orcs, because they don't reproduce.
There are no orc children. They're. I remember those. There's been some joke articles about that. Essentially the orcs were oppressed by the humans, and Sauron was just leading a workers' revolution against his oppressors.
Yeah,
they're really
just silly and ridiculous.
They're turning Sauron into an empathetic villain instead of a, instead of the simplistic way that he was interpreted in the original Jackson trilogy. Well, actually, I mean, he is completely one-sidedly evil, Sauron is, but he isn't quite as evil as his former master Morgoth, because apparently there was a little bit of a different motive between Sauron and Morgoth. Sauron wanted to rule with an iron fist and bring perfect order to the world, whereas Morgoth did not even really care for order. He wanted to conquer the world and then destroy everything but himself. Sauron was all we can let some people live, but make sure they're orderly. What?
The Silmarillion right now?
What do you say?
The Silmarillion. That's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't read the Silmarillion. I just know from lore videos this piece of information here.
Yeah, I actually have attempted to read the Silmarillion, and it's hard to read. The thing about it is, though, it wasn't really meant to publish. Tolkien wrote it kind of as private notes to flesh out his world, and after he was dead, his kids decided to publish it.
Yeah,
and you can tell because it doesn't really tell like a coherent story that you can like adapt really well. It's mostly just a series of notes about all these various kind of like old gods who helped create Middle Earth, and it kind of Sauron was one of them. There's like Malachor and the Morgoth and a few others, and they carved out various races: the men, the dwarves, the elves. How the dwarves were like carved, and they live long, far longer than men, but not forever.
So this is
supposedly
supposedly
dwarves were created even before elves were, but they were suppressed by some other one of the Maiar because they were jealous and wanted to make it so that elves were actually the ones created first.
Oh, and it's like 300 or 200 years before The Hobbit and whatever. So
183 years before Bilbo Baggins found the ring. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I guess like 240 years before the War for the Ring, roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rings of Power, that's supposedly like thousands of years before Lord of the Rings.
But
it's
is weird though when you're taking,
not really connected to Jackson's version.
You know, when you're taking material, like how they do that with short stories and stuff, how it's like a really short thing, and they manage to turn it into an entire film and whatever. That's insane. And then, so to expect everything to be perfect and on point with the lore is really difficult when it's such a short subject matter they're basing it on, right?
Yeah, that's why I don't have problems with them adding material, because that's kind of required to really adapt this story. I just think they went in some directions I don't think Tolkien would have approved.
But like Rings of Power took everything and like changed like almost everything. That was the problem with it, is it wasn't consistent with his world. You know, it wasn't consistent with his universe that he created.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's definitely, Amazon tries to deceive you in thinking it's a prequel to Jackson's movies. It's not. It's its own different world continuity. Whereas this movie firmly is a prequel to the Jackson. It's set in the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Amazon, Rings of Power, trying to make it a prequel. They try to do that by shoehorning that the one stranger might be Gandalf, or at least implying that anyways.
Yeah.
At least so I heard anyways. Like I said, I haven't watched any of the series. Is there any kind of, I mean, do you guys know, is there any kind of redeeming quality to make this at all worth watching?
I haven't watched a single episode of Rings of Power, so I have no idea. I've heard nothing but bad things about it, and I just haven't wasted my time on it.
Yeah.
As far as this movie, though, yeah, it's worth watching. It's not like, but as far as Rings of Power, no, nothing in it is really.
You have watched it, Chair?
If you're gonna watch something, this one would be better to watch than that.
But you have watched Rings of Power, though?
Season 1, yeah.
Okay. It's yeah. I remember getting into some arguments with some people in my personal life about it, and just maybe I can like borrow their Amazon account and watch it or something. I mean, that's kind of, but it ultimately might not be worth my time, because ultimately I'm kind of saving my time for stuff that might be more worth watching, that I am at least hearing somewhat good reviews about it. Like,
well, the thing is, with that show, she's so fucking angry for no reason.
Yeah.
In Rings of Power, Galadriel.
Yeah, she's so fucking bitchy and angry, and you know, Mary Sue, and has no struggles, and like takes on these giant hordes of men that you definitely shouldn't be able to do with one little tiny woman or whatever, with no powers or anything.
I mean, Galadriel though is like a all-powerful elven witch, so she's not just a girl though. So
she could like blast them all away with her magic, but the thing is that from the impressions I'm getting anyways, the movie seems to want to portray that she's an excellent swordswoman too, in the same way of Aragorn or Legolas or something.
Well, where it's like, no man can kill me, and she's like, she stabs him, and she's like, I am no man.
which obviously is a
Wait,
reference to Eowyn from which is directly from the book.
I know, but that's where they were going with it. That's what the image they
Galadriel
wanted.
Galadriel actually says it in Rings of Power. Says that says that in Rings of Power.
Wasn't that in
Or are you just saying it's like that attitude?
No, what was that from? That was from
That's from Lord of the Rings. That's from Return of the King. Yeah.
yeah.
Right, but was you saying
that's the attitude that they wanted, right?
That's
but
okay.
It came across like
you're not saying that she actually said it in Rings of Power.
No.
Just okay. That was what I was asking.
But after they did that in the movies, they're like, "Oh, that's a good idea," right? And then they tried to expand it, and it just doesn't work with her anyway.
Well, in terms of comparing this movie to like the previous animated Lord of the Rings movies, it's much better than the rank and pass Return of the King. That's for sure. In terms of comparing it to Bashki's movie, I'd probably still say it's a bit better, but. The Bashki movie had some very positive qualities. It actually is more faithful to the book than the Jackson trilogy in some ways. Because Peter Boyle, the writer of The Last Unicorn, was the screenwriter of that movie. He was a big fan of Tolkien.
Yeah.
But Bashki made a few really boneheaded decisions when he in production. His idiotic decision to like film a bunch of live action sequences and like color over them was stupid. Mostly because watching those like colored over actors inserted in animated scenes has a horrible uncanny valley effect. It reminds me of watching AI generated videos. They're creepy to watch because they have like this weird kind of real, but also like off in subtle ways that kind of give you the heebie-jeebies. And I got that from his rotoscope people in that movie.
Yeah, what was weirder for me actually was the way that they portrayed the orcs. The orcs didn't even look like really that orcish. They looked like just a bunch of dudes in like these big tunics with these blacked out faces and Viking helmets.
Yeah, because they basically just filmed some guys in masks and then kind of like colored over them, which was an idiotic decision because the entire point of adapting it as an animated movie is to avoid them looking like dudes in masks.
Yeah.
But I realized that was done to save money, and the movie was a $4 million budget. Even in the 70s, was not a huge budget. But
yeah, imagine if they were to like animate every single individual little character in an army versus army charging battle. Imagine how hard it was to make those those battle sequences in Mulan.
That movie's budget was like $70-80 million, something like that. So
yeah.
But the thing is, though, it still cost money to film those live action sequences. And it would have been better to use that money to just work on traditional animation, because most of the traditionally animated stuff in that movie looks fine.
Yeah.
So, and also, and why is also Aragorn in that movie portrayed as a Native American? I don't get that. I don't get that decision at all.
I will say that from the impressions I get, they portrayed his personality a lot more accurate to the book, as well as Frodo's, for that matter.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, Frodo and Aragorn. And John Hurt did a fantastic job voicing Aragorn in that movie. So, honestly, just from a voice acting standpoint, he's every bit on par with Viggo Mortensen. But the design of him as a Native American, I'm kind of like, huh?
You keep on saying Aragorn. Aragorn and Aragorn are two different people, Loudmouth.
So Aragorn, yeah.
Just giving you shit. One character that was pretty over the top, too over the top, was the way they portrayed Gandalf. Like Ian McKellen's performance in the Jackson trilogy was like subtle enough, but still portrayed like some of the irritabilities of an old guy. But then you have Bakshi's version of Gandalf, of where that he's all like, "Fool of a took, throw yourself in next time," and then he's all like, "Hudja, hudja." As he's walking away, just way over the top.
Portrayal in the Bashki movie, they did Samwise Gamgee dirty in that movie.
I agree. Sam was the worst one that they portrayed in that entire movie.
Yeah, the Jackson version of Sam blows the Bashki version away.
Yeah. I mean, there's multiple moments in that movie, the Bakshi movie, of where that he comes off more like an old 50-year-old nanny who's looking after, like, who's babysitting over the kids of the rich dude who hired her or something, as opposed to like an actual like man's man gardener servant dude who can like pick a fight if he has to.
Well, Bashki's more faithful to the whole 17-year time gap between like the opening sequence and when Frodo sets out for his request. And one thing I was always confused when I first saw the Jackson movies before I read the books was always why Sam always talked to Frodo as if he's talking like an elder, when of course the two actors are the same age. That makes a bit more sense when you realize about the 17-year age time gap that Jackson omitted from the story.
I thought Sean Astin was older than Elijah Wood.
Well, they're similar in age. They're pretty similar, but not a big age difference. Whereas the way he talks to Frodo, it sounds like an age difference. There's an age difference. He talks to him like he's talking to an elder, but he's talking to an actor of a similar age.
He's actually 10 years older. Sean is.
Really?
The ending in those movies.
He's 53 and Elijah Wood is 43 as of right now.
Wait, Elijah Wood's only 43? I thought he was older than that.
But that scene at the end where Frodo's in bed or whatever, and they all run in and they're like, Mr. Frodo, and slow motion and like, just bad.
Wait, are you still talking about the Bakshi movie, or you're talking about the Jackson Return of the King?
No, the actual live action ones. But
okay.
Once you see them like that, though, it's hard to not see anything different.
There are definitely some shots in Jackson's movie that were influenced by Bashki's.
But I'm glad that this one, even though it takes place that far behind, that they didn't have some Gollum-like character or anything like that. I'm glad they didn't try and throw in some nostalgia like that. Gollum
would have still been around. He would have still been alive at the time this movie's set, but because he was hundreds of years old. But he wouldn't. There'd been no reason for him to be in this story. So yeah,
but no, instead,
no, but a lot of remakes would do that just for the nostalgia's sake. Just throw them in there.
Oh, definitely.
But instead, War of the Rohirrim decided to. One thing that War of the Rohirrim did do, as far as nostalgia goes, is that it pulled like some quotes, like straight out of the original Jackson trilogy. I remember that there's one part of where that says word for word, Carbine from Dunling. I think that was Hera's line of when that they go investigating of what is happening in the further eastern border of Rohan with the Mumakil and all that stuff, catching some zombie virus or whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
and there's like a couple more as well.
The movie basically assumes you know what Middle Earth is and you know the basics of these kingdoms. If you watch this movie without having seen any previous Lord of the Rings movies, you'll probably be confused at how this world works.
Yeah, somebody who's like, I only watch anime, never live action movies, and they check out this movie, is all like, what's going on?
Yeah.
It's like, what rock are you living on? There was
kind of a name dropping for nostalgia's sake at the end when it mentions that she's going to see Gandalf. I'm like, huh? How would Gandalf have even heard about this?
Yeah.
In terms of the orcs collecting rings, why would that be much of a surprise to Gandalf? I mean, he knows that essentially the One Ring wasn't destroyed, so it's out there somewhere.
By the beginning of a Fellowship of the Ring, though, he doesn't explicitly know that the ring that Bilbo has is the One Ring, though, right?
No, he doesn't know that yet, but otherwise he would have reacted very differently. He doesn't find that until quite a while later. In the book, he doesn't find out till 17 years later. He comes back after 17 years.
Didn't you pretty much know as soon as he turned invisible? Wouldn't you pretty much know at that point? Or did they all have that power?
There could have been
there were many magical rings in Middle Earth. He knew.
But they all did a specific thing, though, didn't they?
Well, No, there were a lot of magical rings that could have done a few things like make you invisible or what have you. So that was not nearly enough to make him think that that ring was the one ring that it was Sauron's one ring. And he even says to Bilbo after, "There's many magical rings in the world." So he didn't think that much of it at the time. But when he touched it, that was the first time he ever did. He got a sense of darkness from it, and that's when he first suspected, this isn't just any magical ring. This could be something more. And then he figures out that after looking at the writing under it, that it is indeed the One Ring.
And he knew that he couldn't handle it, so he had to find someone that he thought could.
Right.
You know.
I do gotta ask, why would it take him like 17 years to try and uncover the mystery of the ring? Wouldn't it take him like a year at max to travel to Gondor and look through all the ancient archives and that stuff, and then get back to the Shire to say, "Oh yeah, this is the One Ring"?
It's the Hobbit weed. That's why.
I mean, well, it doesn't really explain all that well in the book, but implies he was doing other shit during that time gap.
I guess maybe there's the possibility that he was actually on the hunt for Gollum, and maybe that's what took like an extra few years, is because that was the only lead that he had to find out where exactly what everything was going on. What
Shire! Exactly? Baggins!
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing that where Bashki's movie was more faithful to the book than Jackson's is Saruman becoming the multicolored. Where in the book he starts off as Saruman the white, but after like falling into darkness, he changes his robe to the multicolored. But that's admitted from Jackson's movies, probably because they thought it would have looked stupid.
Like a rainbow,
dressed in like a rainbow outfit, it probably would have made him look dumb.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have taken him seriously if he had like a rainbow robe on.
And another thing, they clearly were concerned with the fact that Saruman and Sauron sound weirdly similar.
Right.
So, and they're the two main villains of the movie. So in Bashki's movie, I noticed they always pronounce his name as Aruman to try to avoid that confusion.
It's funny because there's like there's Unusual Suspect, one of my favorite movie reviewers, and then there's of course good old Nostalgia Critic. Nostalgia Critic is all like, "Saruman, you idiot, Saruman. The S isn't silent." But then Unusual Suspect, he reviews the Bakshi movie, and he's all like, I don't mind if they refer to him as Aruman instead of Saruman, but at least be consistent about it, because I guess the movie kind of goes back and forth between characters pronouncing it as Saruman versus Aruman.
Yeah, it does. Like I said, Bashki's movie is an interesting watch, but ultimately it was a messy movie. Supposedly Bashki said that he wanted a sequel to adapt Return of the King, but he never got to make it. And he said if he had known he wouldn't be able to make Return of the King, he wouldn't have made the first movie at all.
I haven't seen the entire animated one from the 80s or whatever. I still haven't. Or
came out in 78, actually.
But instead, it was left all up to Rankin Bass to make Return of the King.
And that one is easily the worst of the animated or any Lord of the Rings movie ever made. That's easily the worst.
Yeah, but for its time, I don't know.
Honestly, if I was to like watch that and then Rings of Power, if I had to guess, I probably would enjoy Rings of Power better than Rankin Bass Return of the King, because I've only seen like reviews, and in those reviews, they'd be in those video movie reviews, whatever, they'd be like playing little snippets, little clips of the Rankin Bass Return of the King, and it's just the profuse amount of songs that they'd be playing like every 5 minutes throughout that movie. It's like, this sounds like torture.
Yeah, it's not a good movie. Supposedly, when Peter Boyle was looking for someone to direct The Last Unicorn, Rankin and Bass were second from the last people he would have wanted to direct the movie. And it turned out Rankin and Bass were the only ones who wanted to do it. But he agreed to let them do it as long as he wrote the entire screenplay, which made the movie very faithful to the book, because the book's original author wrote the screenplay for the movie. And because of that, The Last Unicorn still turned out to be a really good movie.
I never checked out The Last Unicorn.
Holy shit! You haven't seen The Last Unicorn? That's a classic.
I haven't. Is it like it's an animated movie, right?
Yeah, from
Oh, yeah.
1982. A really good one.
I had an ex that was obsessed with that movie.
1982, before the Disney Renaissance, back when animated movies were a little bit more indie throughout the 80s.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it has a really classical fantasy feel that you rarely find. It's interesting that it came out a couple years before Disney's The Black Cauldron. The Black Cauldron's budget was like, I think, almost 8 times higher than The Last Unicorns, and yet The Last Unicorn is easily the superior movie because The Last Unicorn really followed closely the book it was based on, and The Black Cauldron did not.
Right. Steamer96 asks, "What's your favorite Rankin Bass property overall?"
The Last Unicorn, easily.
Okay.
I
what
love
about Frosty the
holiday
Snowman?
shorts as well. I grew up on them. We're a couple of misfits. We're a couple of misfits.
He made Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Return to Oz.
Frosty the Snowman, Santa Claus Coming to Town, Rankin and Bass made them all.
Frosty the Snowman, Little Drummer Boy, all those old ones that we remember.
Those are great. They actually were mostly animated in Japan. And one interesting fact, Rankin and Bass Japanese, the studio that they collaborated with to do most of the animation, was actually later absorbed into Studio Ghibli when Miyazaki started making his movies.
Right.
Yeah. He also made The King and I in 1999. That, if anybody remembers that animated,
that one's probably one of his worst. That's actually a really bad one.
The King and I, isn't that some movie of where that there's like some woman who's like a Christian who tries to influence like some Muslim nation to be more Christian?
No, it's not a Muslim nation. It was Siam in like the 1800s. It's not really to bring them more Christian, but just to influence them in Western values. Watch the original version, or Burn. Do not watch the Rankin and Bass version because
watch the actual
because that one's actually good. The Rankin and Bass version is garbage.
I have like weird vague memories of this movie actually.
It's Bangkok actually.
The King and I.
Well, yeah, but at the time it was called Siam.
It's Taiwan, yeah.
And for some reason, I thought I remembered it being like based in some Arabian culture.
No, it wasn't. And there's kind of a pseudo romance with the king between her and the king, but it's horribly done in the
Taiwan is the country.
It's like a funny little animal sidekick that every character has in that movie, and the main villain in the original story, he was kind of more of a traditionalist who really wanted Siam to stick with the old ways and kind of rejected Western culture. Whereas in the Rankin Bass version, he's an evil wizard who summons dragons.
See, Rankin Bass also did Thundercats.
Okay,
then. So I don't know. Thundercats might have to be my favorite one.
Then I don't think this movie I have seen, actually. I might be thinking of something else. But I searched up The King and I, 1956. Is that the movie that you guys recommend watching?
The original. Watch that version. Do not... The Rankin and Bass one from 1999, it's trash. It's not a good movie.
For some reason, I'm looking at some of the thumbnails of some of these videos, and I see the King pop up on one of them, and he kind of looks like the guy who played as Ramesses from the old 50s Ten Commandments. The same
actor.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you know?
Yeah, the same actor who played Ramses in the Ten Commandments plays the king in that story. Yeah,
that explains a lot then.
But in the 1956 version, whereas in the 1999 version, it's like he might have been dead by then. I don't know.
I'm looking at him in this picture, and he looks kind of similar to Imhotep from the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies.
That's a different actor.
Well, obviously. I mean, what, a 40-year time gap between the two movies?
Yeah.
Yeah, they need to
1999.
do something with that Brendan Fraser guy because he's getting old. So.
Yeah, they placed a song from the original movie that where about her being nervous meeting the king, and in this one she sings it when a dragon is attacking her boat, and the song literally makes the dragon go away. It's the stupidest, even among the children. I know the movie's made for children, but goddamn, that's just stupid.
So this movie was made by Warner Brothers Studios.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm saying though, The Last Unicorn, on the other hand, was a very good movie that they made, and that's easily the best movie that Rankin Bass Studios ever made.
You know, all this talk about Warner Brothers and The King and I. Something makes me think that if somebody was to do a ranking of all the Warner Brothers full-length animated movies, that The King and I would end up somewhere on the bottom, and that The Iron Giant would end up somewhere up on the top or something.
Probably. I think Warner Brothers has the rights now. I know that the Bashki version of Lord of the Rings is on Max. Is streaming on Max, so I think they got that. I'm not sure about the two Rankin Bass ones. The Rankin and Bass version of The Hobbit that actually came out before Bashki's movie, that was okay. It's definitely a better representation of The Hobbit than what they did later with Return of the King.
I didn't discover Lord of the Rings from that animated movie. I discovered it from playing a game called Hugo's House of Horrors.
I do have one question. Which do you think was better, the Rankin Bass Hobbit movie or the Peter Jackson Hobbit trilogy?
Peter Jackson Hobbit trilogy by a lot. Come on.
Even though it takes a whole crap ton of deviations from the source material?
It doesn't really take that many deviations. It just adds a lot in order to bloat it to a trilogy.
Barrels,
though. And a lot of the stuff it added was stuff from the Lord of the Rings appendices, but a lot of it is just made up entirely as well. Yeah. So,
okay.
I do love Honest Trailers renaming the last Hobbit movie from The Battle of the Five Armies to The Hobbit and the Bloating of the 5 Pages.
Yep.
Because it's so true that the Battle of the Five Armies in the book is only like 5 pages. And they turn that into this massive hour-long, incredibly expensive action sequence, which is a cool
Which was a total fucking mess, by the way.
Huh?
Which is what hurts me to watch that movie.
Yeah, I still like that movie. It has some flaws, but I still think it's pretty cool.
Well, okay, I guess the good things I don't remember that well. I mean, I guess there is the one part of where that the Bard guy, I can't remember what his guy.
Bard the Boatman kills Smaug. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was cool, but I mean, that does not really outweigh the downsides being the Lake Town advisor guy, him doing this goofy ass Looney Tunes shit of where that he dresses up as a woman and then stuffs a whole bunch of coins in his dress to make it look like a couple
none of that shit's in the book at all. Because the Lake Town mayor was okay guy in the book. He's not mentioned very much, but there's no indication that he gets the full asshole makeover in Jackson's movie.
Yeah, and that's what pains me the most of it. That guy is like the Jar Jar Binks of Lord of the Rings by far.
And I love how Honest Trailer summed up Thorin's arc in this movie. We watch as Thorin Oakenshield, who goes from a mopey dick brooding over his lost gold to a mopey dick brooding over his found gold.
Yep.
Yeah, because the movie wants to take its time and just, like you say, bloat the time of the movie by having the movie focus so much on how that he's got this gold sickness, whatever exactly it's called.
That is actually in the book. It's just kind of stretched out a bit in the movie.
Right. I'm sure.
Well, the thing about The Hobbit, though, is you could 2 movies I can easily see for that story, because even though it's a short book, it's a pretty dense one that has a lot of events in it, whereas the Lord of the Rings books are more just kind of detailed in terms of its events. And of course, if you add material though from the Lord of the Rings appendices that was set during the time of The Hobbit, you can add a lot more. So 2 movies what was an easy decision. 3 was definitely pushing it a bit.
Maybe it would have been better if they did practical effects orcs instead of CG orcs.
There were still some practical effect orcs in the Hobbit movies. Though the main guy, Azog the Defiler, they made him all CG. But at least it was good CG. The effects on him were really good.
I don't know. It looked like a PS4 game character to me.
No, it did not.
The only other animated thing that's out right now that's actually interesting would be the Skeleton Crew Star Wars thing.
The what guy? The what guys? What?
Star Wars Skeleton Crew. It's animated, but it's like
I haven't watched that, so I don't know.
Neither have I. I just finished like the second episode of Andor, and I still got to watch more of that series.
Yeah, so like with the Lord of the Rings thing, yeah, we're rating it around a 6 or a 7 out of 10. So
yeah, 6 or 7 out of 10. We seem to be all in agreement on how we'd score with Lord of the Rings: War of the Rohirrim.
Yeah,
well, that's what the critics are saying too. A lot of them, like they're rating it in the middle.
Yeah, I mean it's above average. Between if you're going to see this or Gladiator 2, see this, please. Do not see Gladiator 2.
Oh yes, I mean this. Okay, Gladiator 2 deserves even more to flop than this movie does. It's kind of sad as to how that it's only made like a third of its production budget so far. It's not even like gotten close yet to even starting to make up for its marketing budget.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of surprised at how poorly this movie is doing. I figured the Lord of the Rings IP would be enough to get this movie some audience. I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be like a massive hit or anything like that, but I'm surprised at how poor this movie has been doing at the box office.
Right, but because it's animated, some older folks are probably like, "Ooh, it's for kids,"
which is dumb, and because it's better than a lot of animated movies. Probably better than Despicable Me 4. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But the thing is, even if this movie ends up losing Warner Brothers some money, it still serves its purpose of allowing them to keep the Lord of the Rings rights.
Mark my words, better than Sonic 3.
Really?
I'll reserve judgment until I've seen Sonic 3.
Yeah, I haven't seen Sonic 3 either, so
I'm making a prediction. That's all I'm saying. Like I haven't seen it either, but
really? Okay. Well, you're kind of jumping the gun there just a little bit, Chair.
I've actually heard Sonic 3's been getting good reviews. I don't know. It could end up being good. People have been calling it the best of the trilogy.
Maybe. Then again, I'm kind of one of those weirdos who ranks the first one a 7 out of 10 and the second one a 5 out of 10 because while everyone else thinks the second one is better than the first one.
I definitely did not think the second one was better than the first. I don't really think either of them are that good, but they're solid enough.
What about the Knuckles TV show? Have you watched that? Oh my god.
I watched the Knuckles show. Yeah, that was pretty bad. I watched some of that.
I've heard it was bad.
Yeah, he's got to help this guy get to a bowling tournament. Yeah, it's really
it doesn't seem to focus that much on Knuckles.
Yeah, if you're gonna do it, like give Knuckles an interesting backstory, what have you. Instead, the movie's just a boring little family comedy about him trying to help this random ass dude win a bowling tournament. It's lame.
But ultimately, I will still give my own box office money to Sonic 3 as opposed to Mufasa. So, as to give the giant middle finger to Disney.
Well, the only movie I plan on seeing in the next week or so is the Nosferatu remake. That is going to be epic. In fact, go see that one, and we need to do
I'll be back.
Three of us need to do a review of that one next week.
I'm not so versed up in Nosferatu nor invested, so I do not know if I will.
Dude, it's by the same guy who made The Northman.
Oh, well then you're kind of like doing the opposite of selling the movie to me because you know.
Come on, The Northman was a goddamn masterpiece. It was one of the coolest movies.
I know. There's like some great qualities to it, objectively great qualities. It's just way too much of a mean-spirited watch for me to where I don't know if I would want to watch this one to have my soul drained as well.
I mean, it is a horror movie, so that is kind of the point of it. It's a remake of Nosferatu, the 1922 movie Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror.
Isn't it like based off of Dracula or something?
Kinda. It's a loose adaptation of It was loosely based on Dracula, but it goes in a different direction. It's like a German movie from the early 20s. It was a silent movie. It's public domain, so you can watch the original for free on YouTube.
Okay.
And I think,
know if it's
and I think the remake is going to be fucking amazing. I can't wait to watch it because Roger Eggers is got to be like one of the best filmmakers working today. The Northman, goddamn masterpiece. The Witch, a brilliant horror movie. The Lighthouse, incredible thriller. So I'll see anything that this guy puts out, and I'm definitely seeing Nosferatu, the remake.
All right.
It'll make vampires scary again. But other than that, like I said, if you have a choice between this and Gladiator 2, see Lord of the Rings: War of the Rohirrim. It does not deserve to flop as bad as it's been flopping. It's okay. It's worth a watch if you're a Lord of the Rings fan. It's not perfect.
I agree.
Close, but it's okay.
It's okay as a casual watch. It's nothing like absolutely emotionally enthralling like the entirety of the Jackson trilogy is.
No, it's definitely not like a new Jackson trilogy. It's just kind of a nice side story based on a story Tolkien wrote that took up 2 pages.
With what might I say, the most beautiful female character presented on the screen from Lord of the Rings yet by far.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I think she's more beautiful than Liv Tyler, than Kate Blanchett, and
a redhead. I've always had a thing for redheads.
Oh yeah. Plus the way that she was curvily designed is to be more of a chauvinist.
Well, it's kind of a silly thing because she's an animated character, whereas you can draw an animated woman however you want, but a real woman, is limited by reality.
Yeah.
But
hey, did we want to say anything else to give Chair some time to get back?
Yeah. There's more.
Steamer 96 says his ranking of the Warner Brothers 90s films go in from best to worst. I'm assuming Cats Don't Dance, The Iron Giant, Quest for Camelot, and then The King and I.
Oh, come on. That's bullshit. I mean, in what universe is Cats Don't Dance better than the Iron Giant?
I have to agree. Cats Don't Dance is charming. It's fun, but it's not nearly as emotionally gripping as the Iron Giant.
Yeah, I mean, Cats Don't Dance. Yeah, there's a couple of good gags. The villains are pretty funny, but is it any kind of masterpiece? No. I will admit, though, that the evil Shirley Temple villain is pretty funny in that movie.
And freaking Max the Butler, he always kind of scared me when I watched that movie when I was a kid. Especially with the overly dramatic, manly choir that goes on in the background whenever he's on screen. Just overly dramatic, just making it sound like that you're in hell or something as you're witnessing him tearing up some shit.
That movie when Darla keeps trying to sabotage them but makes their show better. That scene is undeniably incredibly funny. I will. Okay.
Oh yeah.
The reactions the animators put on her face every time her schemes blow up are fucking hilarious. So Cats Don't Dance has some good qualities, but ranking it above Iron Giant, come on.
Yeah. I've never seen Quest for Camelot, so
yeah, that one's not very good either, but better than The King, and I'll agree with that.
Inconceivable.
Right. we were just saying between seeing this movie and Gladiator 2, we'll see Lord of the Rings: War of the Rohirrim.
Do it for Helm Hammerhand.
Because Gladiator 2 has sharks in the fucking Roman Colosseum. Sharks.
Well, and it was just there for
I was just going to go off of the logic that out of all the movies that needed a sequel, Gladiator has got to be the least of them.
Well, the thing is he didn't even care about, the actual, staying along canonically what he established in the first movie and stuff and making it historically accurate. He used to do that with movies. I don't know what happened to him. But
the first Gladiator took some massive liberties with history as well, but this one was just off the walls.
To your point, though, Chair, yeah, Ridley Scott has just become like a dementia-riddled old hack now.
Oh yeah, His Napoleon movie was complete fucking trash.
Exodus, Gods and Kings.
You think you're so great because you have boats.
The latest iterations of Alien franchise, or at least the ones where. Did he direct both Prometheus and Covenant?
Yes.
Did he? He didn't do Romulus though, did he?
No.
He produced Romulus, but he didn't direct it.
Okay, didn't think so because how would he have so much time for that when he was busy making a completely unneeded sequel? Did you hear that they're gonna do a sequel of Forrest Gump and Happy Gilmore as well?
I heard about Happy Gilmore, but Forrest Gump, I haven't heard anything about that.
Oh yeah.
At least it's something that I saw on Facebook, and it wasn't some joke meme that I saw one of my friends share. It was like an official page that I follow.
Why don't they make Titanic 2 while they're at it? Jack's Revenge.
Yep. Leonardo DiCaprio coming in.
The rumor is that it's Chalamet, so I don't know.
You left me to die, Rose. Why'd you do that? There was enough room for us both on that raft. You left me to die.
What about Timothy Chalamet?
Well, that's the rumor, is that Timothy Chalamet would probably play Forrest Gump's kid or whatever, right?
Oh no.
No, come on.
And that Tom Hanks would still be in it.
Yeah.
I'm against this idea. Leave Forrest Gump alone. It's one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah. Which, if we want to like simp for and defend movies, let's go on a rant for Forrest Gump about how everybody is saying, Peggy is so toxic to Forrest and all, or Jenny. Why did I say Peggy? Jenny is so toxic to Forrest and all that shit.
She's a woman. What do you expect?
Well, the thing is that she ultimately, is kind of toxic to Forrest, but it's not completely out of malice or anything like that. It's that she was abused as a kid, and so she's like trying to explore life a bit and trying to find her place in the world, and just unfortunately, she's inadvertently affecting and hurting Forrest at the same time.
Gets AIDS and shit like that.
Yeah. One of the best lines for that movie, I ain't no smart man, but I know what love is.
Yeah. But from what I hear, they plan on, back to Lord of the Rings, the subject of the stream. They plan on actually making more live action Lord of the Rings movies. That's why we're desperate to keep the rights. There's supposedly plans on making a Hunt for Gollum movie.
Wow. Unnecessary,
but that is the main reason they wouldn't have been able to make the Hunt for Gollum movie if they hadn't made this one.
They should use the animation style of the Gollum video game.
Oh, I've only seen snapshots of that, and it just looks so garbage. So PS2 graphics.
Yeah.
Filthy little graphics.
It does look terrible.
You know what I think I would like Peter Jackson to do? I think I'd like him to upstage Amazon and make a movie that takes place in the Second Age when Sauron sinks. What was that mighty man kingdom that called again? You know, the one that he sinks in the Rings of Power.
I don't think he has. I don't know if Jackson has the rights to do movies in that era. I think Amazon has those rights.
I guess. Freaking copyright and all that shit.
The Hobbit will be public domain 8 years from next Wednesday.
Oh, really?
So they'll have to do something with that.
And all the Lord of the Rings movies will be public domain 15 years after that.
But like I said, all they have to do is make it. They don't have to put it out. That's the rule, as long as they produce something.
Again, no, we don't know that because the contract could say you do have to put it out. But this one, it exists as a rights retainer, but as far as movies that were just made as rights retainers, it's not bad, you know?
Yeah, if you compare that to something like what they keep doing with Fantastic Four every time the the thing expires.
Yeah.
They try
Yeah.
again with that series, and it's just like, oh,
Yeah. Fant 4-stick, anybody?
it's just
Yeah.
interesting though how when they do something animated, they seem to be doing well right now. So maybe the other producers of these movies should consider that.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone's going to be replicating this movie with its low box office.
Yeah.
Like
We might not see a return to 2D animation anytime soon.
Yeah, it's it's looking that way. It seems like 2D animation really can't attract a big audience, even with a lore IP like Lord of the Rings behind it. It's kind of sad, really.
Really sad. They would rather go off and watch a shitty 3D animated Moana sequel than an anime based in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I can't figure out that at all. It's some.
I mean, come on, like young girls. Yeah, I know that young girls like Disney movies and all that shit, but they also like anime. Why not go see this movie that centers on a female character? I think that might have also been part of strategy why they had Hera Hammerhand be the central focus of this movie, is because they wanted to attract more women who like anime to come watch this movie. Unfortunately, that strategy did not work though, because ultimately Lord of the Rings is still like a man's property. And
yeah, I think that actually hurt the box office, emphasizing Hera's role in the trailers. It seemed to have turned off a lot of male fans who have become very weary of girl boss movies, because, for good reason, Hollywood has put out a lot of trash girl boss movies in the last decade. And when you see signs of girl boss themes in a movie, it tends to turn audiences away. It's why Furiosa also was a big box office flop that lost like $100 million.
Yeah.
Do you think this would have been better if they had some bigger celebrity voices in it?
Probably not. But that probably would have just bloated this movie's budget, and they would have lost more money.
Like Chris Pratt as Wolf or something, you know?
No.
It had Brian Cox. I guess he's kind of a biggish name. I know he is.
What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, like what you're saying there, Loudmouth. I can completely understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, I wish that all those people who are completely turned off from what is dubbed as girl boss movies would at least listen to people like us who are a little bit more in the center when we go saying, "Oh, this movie isn't so third wave feminist," but no, instead they'll just brush us off of like a whole bunch of cucks or shills or grifters,
but these people
like that, and you're like, no, it's still girl bossy.
If a movie has a female protagonist or whatever in it, or a black person, it's always like, oh, this is so woke, and I'm like, I'm so sick of that definition, because that's not what woke is supposed to mean, you know?
Yeah.
Where automatically, if it's a girl in the thing, oh, it's a woke movie, I'm not seeing it. You know,
but I mean I kind of don't feel bad for Hollywood in that regard, because I mean they kind of brought that on themselves, like pushing this shit so aggressively in the last 10 years. They feel the need to put it in every fucking franchise. Like, has any movie in the last decade done had a damsel in distress that just needed a man to save
right
them?
now, look at the thing with Cynthia and Ariana Grande in their interviews about Wicked. Like, they're acting all weird and like creepy, and just that woman needs some mental help or something.
And Ariana Grande needs a full course meal, by the look.
No, but if you've seen the interviews with her and the Cynthia lady from Wicked, that Cynthia girl has problems.
I go
hearing. Wicked. I mean, it's a chick flick, so it wasn't made for me. Thus, I didn't care for it much. But the music was genuinely well done in spots, but it didn't need to be 2.5 fucking hours.
And it definitely wasn't.
You went out and watched Wicked?
I saw Wicked, yeah.
Okay.
And it definitely wasn't initially supposed to be like this thing, like, oh, Oz is so gay. It's like, yeah, the Wicked play, technically, yeah, if you watch that thing, yeah, it's kind of whatever. But to say that oh, the whole of Oz is intended to be gay. It's so stupid.
Yeah, that wasn't really a part of the movie, though. That wasn't there.
No, I know, but every
Lemma,
interview, she's like emotionally. She can't do an interview without holding her hand. She's like crying over every little thing. Like, just stop it.
I mean,
honestly,
there's a heterosexual romance. I mean, I guess there is one guy in the background who implies is gay, but he's not a main character.
honestly, Lemma, if you like go seeing like more movies more often than a lot of us, you could like exploit that and like make a quick shot review of movies again as a way to maybe make a cheap exploitation off of the algorithm, maybe gain like 400 plus views off of it.
Yeah, I just like
video.
doing live streams to discuss movies rather than that. I like being able to talk off against somebody.
Well,
I do know that my Inside Out 2 review that got like around 400 views. It also grabbed a couple dislikes because I guess people did not like the fact that I was mentioning, oh yeah, this movie is not gay. It's all like, how dare you try to squish our gay fantasies about Riley making out with the one lady that she's like a freaking
I saw a decent. I watched a decent Disney Plus movie that was based on a book about a girl with cerebral palsy and getting a machine to talk and communicate, so she learns how to whatever. But it's this girl who's in middle school, and of course the teachers and students treat her like crap and whatever. But the thing I found good about it was the fact that they actually cast the girl with cerebral palsy. Amazing. So,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
but it's one of those family films, whatever. It's not for everybody, but I thought it had interesting stuff in it.
Yeah,
because they basically had it where there was a narrator, but that was talking in the girl's head, right? That's her voice.
Right.
And she enters like a student trivia competition, right? And the teacher's like, "There's no way she can do that. She's retarded." You know, pardon my French, but that's in the movie. That's not me saying it.
But another thing about it doesn't look like Warner Brothers spent much to market it, because a lot of people I know haven't even heard of this movie because there's been very few like spots. They put out like one trailer a few months ago, and they haven't even bothered putting on a second one. And
I heard about it once before.
So it seems
I heard about it once before, and then I saw that it was out, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that movie." I'm like, you know,
it seems like Warner Brothers really didn't care all that much if it was a hit or not. They really just wanted it out there as the rights retainer.
Yeah. I was aware of it via Facebook ads. I did not see it like then again, it's been a while since I have been to the movie theaters, especially that often as compared to the past. But I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any trailers for it when I watched Inside Out 2 or any other recent movie.
But the fact is, a lot of these companies don't even care. Like, the fact that they greenlit, for example, Amazon greenlighting second season or whatever from, Rings of Power and all that. Like, it's like, what? And then right before Velma got canceled, they were going to make another season of that too. And it's like they don't care what fans think anymore, you know?
Well, with Velma, they essentially ordered 2 seasons to begin with. So season 2 was already kind of in the can before the first season came out and got its reception. So they figured, but I don't think that's an excuse, because something as bad as Velma really should have just been like hidden away just for sheer
by the way,
embarrassment.
They're rebooting X-Files, and it is going to be woke. They've already said that basically.
Why are they rebooting X-Files? What the fuck?
Because they had to have a black person in it. You know?
I'm sure there were black people in the original show.
One.
Yeah.
There's one black guy that I remember.
In the 90s, there were black actors on TV.
I know, but there's one black guy in X-Files that I remember, and then the rest I don't think. But like, they've already said that, it's going to be a younger, more diverse cast and everything.
One of the first shows I watched as a kid was hosted by a black guy, Reading Rainbow.
Like Chris Carter said that. Chris Carter literally said it's going to be a more diverse cast and blah, blah, blah. So yeah. It's like,
well, that's expected with every modern, and that's one thing I'll praise more of the Rohirrim for. They actually have Rohan look like Rohan. They didn't try to like change it so that it was like ethnically diverse the whole time or anything stupid like that.
Yeah.
It's meant to be a Nordic style society, so they have it look like a goddamn Nordic style society.
They didn't downtown LAize it in the way that Despot of Antrim describes it.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you guys seen the new Superman trailer?
Yeah, actually, that was pretty cool.
I don't know.
Say,
the dog.
I'm kind of annoyed personally about how they gave the like inside out red underpants of Superman again. I kind of wish that they stuck closer to the Zack Snyder Superman outfit instead.
The Babylon Bee did a joke that said, "Crazy new woke Superman movie has him wearing his underwear on the outside of his pants."
How did he get beat though? He's laying on the ground. How do you think he got attacked? Like, who did it?
Well, I'm sure we'll find out in the movie how that happened.
It must have been Lex Luthor, but the dog. I don't know about the dog part. I don't know.
Crypto the Super Dog definitely doesn't make it different than Snyder's movie. We've never gotten Crypto the Super Dog in a live action Superman before.
I will say, I liked the original soundtrack that they made for the trailer. At least is fucking awesome. Like that power metal guitar riff, like at the beginning there. I guess it's supposed to be like a guitar version of a John Williams score of one of the older Superman movies.
Yeah, but didn't they do that in like Justice League? Whenever Superman showed up, his theme was like played with violins or something like that.
Which version?
Not sure.
The Whedon version of the Snyder Cut.
Didn't they both have like that metal soundtrack?
I guess, kinda.
I don't know. It's the first time that I've personally heard it. One thing that that kind of bugs me about the trailer, though, it looks like that they're going to like, and you might have read my my ex post in response to you posting the trailer about this loudmouth, but it looks like that they're going to overstuff it with villains to where that, and I'm not so sure if they're going to be able to flush out the villains in the same way that something like, say, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish did, for example, and it might just end up being a mess in the same way of Spider-Man 3.
The appearances by other DC heroes are more kind of like glorified cans. They appear, but they're not really fleshed out characters. They mostly just appear to establish that this is like the existence of a greater DC universe. Superman is the main character of the movie because the movie is called Superman.
Oh, I don't know how to put it better, but how many villains did you count in the trailer? There's Luthor, there's the kaiju monster thing, and I thought I saw like
villain.
2 or 3
the
others.
kaiju monster thing is just kind of like a monster descended Superman rather than a villain. Luthor, and I think Metamorpho appears.
I will say I'm not so sure how I feel about the Lex Luthor casting. I mean, anything is better than Jesse Eisenberg. But
I'll give Holt a chance.
But that's because it was like his son or grandson or whatever. It wasn't him. It was, his relative.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Christopher Holt. That was the name of the guy who's being played as Lex Luthor. Christopher Holt.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right, the guy who played as Renfield and the Weasley boyfriend from The Menu.
Mm.
Yeah, he might do a good job.
Honestly, I guess my personal
Superman's
opinion.
origins at the start of the movie, Superman's already established. Superman and Lois already know each other, and Luthor already hates Superman before the movie starts. It just kind of skips all that and assumes the backstory.
Apparently, since we're on Superman, I saw this one post on Facebook that showed like 8 pictures of alleged like pictures from the trailer, and the 8th picture was Superman kissing some Indian dude, and the comments were all like, "Oh, this is like a woke. I'm not gonna watch it. Anything woke is a big old no."
Generated image.
Yeah, and I saw the reply to that, and it was all like, "It's fake," and it's like. Man, the culture war has already started with this movie.
AI generated hoaxes are going to get really bad in the next few years.
Yeah.
So that's actually something that scares me. that's a topic that's much deeper than this stream is intended, though.
Yeah,
I already did it.
but just imagine if the one sole reason why this version of Superman is not successful is just because that some AI image of Superman kissing an Indian man goes viral, and therefore people on the right side of the political aisle who would probably watch a Superman movie doesn't see it just because of one gay kiss that is not even in the movie.
How long until you get arrested and sent to life in prison after someone makes an AI generated video of you murdering, shooting up a school?
Yeah.
No. Fuck me.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, are we about to wrap up this live stream?
Yeah. I think we've said everything we can about War of the Rohirrim.
Right.
All right. So War of the Rohirrim, not a great movie, not a perfect movie, but pretty good, and worth watching over Gladiator 2 if you want to see something this weekend.
Yeah. One final thing: see War of the Rohirrim. Do it for Helm Hammerhand.
Or Helm Hammerhand. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.